All right. Thank you for being here. Mark Stephen Porro, designer, actor, writer, many other things. But maybe we start off with, what are the components of being a designer? How does one become a designer?
Well, it was very interesting. So I went to The Ohio State University, and I went there originally for medical school. From 8th grade on, I wanted to be an ophthalmologist. And the main reason for that, I didn't realize until years later, is my best friend had a great slot car collection, had an elevator in his house. He had heated sidewalks and driveways, so no snow shoveling in the winter. And they had a limo instead of a car. And his father was an ophthalmologist, so I kind of wanted those same things. So I thought that would be a cool thing. But when I got to Ohio State, I had a very strong creative side. My mother got us all into the arts as we were kids. She took us. I grew up in a suburb in Ridgewood, New Jersey, about maybe 20 minutes outside of New York City. So we went into the city a lot to see theater and the ballet and Radio City Music Hall and the World's Fair when that was there in the 60s and stuff like that. So we got exposed to a lot of stuff, and all of her children, I think, except for my older brother, performed and studied the ballet for many years. We had a local celebrity that was a big time choreographer that he and his dancers appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show a lot. And so that all got us kind of turned on to this stuff. So I have two older brothers, two older sisters, and one younger sister. And my older brother and sisters were kind of stars as kids. And I didn't get into it until the late age of about 7. So I always had a strong creative side. So when I went to Ohio State, the medical school thing got kind of boring pretty quickly. And because this creative side kept popping up, and I happened to look through the course curriculum at Ohio State, and they had a thing called industrial design, which was it married my loves, which was math and science and art. And I didn't even know that profession existed. So I think those are 3 good components for design. So they happened to have one of the best schools in the country at the time. So I really lucked out. And so I still design, though I'm officially retired because I live here in France and I'm not allowed to work really. But design has always come into my life in many facets. So when I was acting in LA and when I was starting new businesses, I always handled all the design. And when I did the snack food company was my last business adventure, I designed all the equipment and built the factory and things like that to customize everything for this unique product that we had. So it has always come together. So design is a really important thing, but I would say one of the biggest aspects of design is empathy, which plays a very valuable part of my life, especially while we're here talking about this book that I wrote, because when you're designing, you really have to take into consideration the end user, whether it's going to be a brochure or a product of any kind. You have to study the end user and see how they're going to react and interact with whatever the product is. And it's very important to, I guess, pretty much put yourself in their shoes. And that can only help you solve whatever the design problem is. So empathy is a huge deal, not only in design, but I think in life overall.
Empathy, I agree, is one of those things where when you are younger and you're looking at job interviews and you worry about the questions they're going to ask, and people say, what's your greatest strength, what's your strongest, weakest, or your worst weakness, or what's your weakness? In the classic, my weakness is I care too much. I like that. I mean, I wouldn't say that in an interview, but I think thinking about it through just working and getting older and then being in policing and being in the military and all that, I think that empathy was a thing I was trying to develop the most, is to be able to understand someone else's perspective. Mm-hmm. And I think that helps a lot. I think that also if I was going to be in an interview, maybe not these days, but maybe some years ago, I would say empathy is my greatest strength and my greatest weakness, because you can think about the other person a little too much. Like if you're a police and you're out there to enforce law, order maintenance through traffic control or whatever, and if you part of your job is writing summonses, tickets, whatever you want to call them, if you're too empathetic, you're never going to write anything. So
Right.
you have to get to a point to understand it and then say, well, maybe the summons or this little intervention at this point is going to help not it's going to help this person not do this in the future.
Yeah.
But whatever. But empathy, yeah, big deal.
And not easy. But if you think about it, if all of us, I think we're more empathetic with others, the world would be a lot better. Certainly a lot easier to get along with, because, you don't know. I'll tell you a funny story. So when I was in LA, I was visiting a friend's design firm. And on occasion, you have vendors, who are trying to court your business. So they would bring these elaborate food platters and chocolates and things like that. And I was visiting this firm, and an angry older lady burst through the door screaming that someone parked in front of her driveway again. And this office was right on a busy street, but near a residential area. And apparently there was like 30 people in the office, and this thing has happened before. And everybody in the office, except for the receptionist, scattered. They didn't want to deal with this woman because this was something that seemed to happen quite often. And I look at her, and I'm looking at this new situation, and I kind of did it as a joke, but I learned a big lesson from it. And I said, I need to change this woman's anger. I need to get her out of that space. So I said, "Madam, would you like a piece of chocolate?" And I showed her the beautiful box of chocolates. And her demeanor completely changed. And she smiled and she said, "Oh, I would love to, but I need to watch my figure." And I said, "Lady, I'm watching your figure and you look fine to me. Please have a chocolate." And she took a chocolate and she floated out of that office. And then everybody started coming back and they applauded. And I said, "No, this is nothing to applaud." I said, "First of all, stop parking in front of this lady's driveway. This is not her fault, it's your fault." But that's a way to handle that situation, and not meet her with more anger that would just escalate the situation. So what I intended to do is just to break the cycle of anger. And I learned a lesson from that. And you say, well, so you don't know what, I guess the empathy maybe comes in that you don't know what someone's going through, or if they had a bad day, or they just lost a loved one or something like that. You got to maybe take a moment and say, okay, why is this person angry? And what can I do to help? Instead of diffuse as opposed to escalate.
Yes, I agree. It's easy to make somebody mad. It maybe is it's probably just as easy, maybe not in some situations, but I think it doesn't take much more energy to try to figure out how to not make them mad. And some people are just unreasonable and it's just going to happen. But
Right.
yeah, good lessons to learn. I don't know if we learned about that in school, like interpersonal relationships, maybe you would call that. Maybe in church growing up, you learn kind of that. Or maybe it's just being around your family and friends where you learn how you can push somebody's buttons and how you can, get along.
Yeah.
So
It helps. I was lucky. So I grew up with 5 siblings and both of my folks. So we learned, and we all went to Catholic school early on. So I'm sure we learned the difference between right and wrong and the commandments and all that business. But watching my parents not lecture, but just kind of show by example how to treat people. My dad's favorite prayer was others, and he always tried to put others in front of himself. And we just watched him do these things and thought that was normal. When the waitress didn't charge you for something in the restaurant, you called her over and fixed it. You didn't say, "Oh boy, I got away with a free Coca-Cola" or something like that. And you said, "No, this woman is working hard. and she forgot to do it. So we need to correct this. And you just grow up watching this stuff, and this was all normal. So I was very fortunate in that way.
With living in France, you said you can't really work over there. Does that include if you're a writer and you're writing books and then you start selling those? Does that fall into the category of now you're working in France?
No, I think when you're getting, I now have a 10-year residence card, but when you're a foreigner, and I'm an immigrant, so it's an interesting thing to adjust to. But you got to be open to it because the stereotype of the ugly American certainly exists, and you can tell. You hear the tone, and you see the attitude in certain people. I came over here, and I just thought that the whole thing was great. It's a wonderful new adventure. And I'm like everybody else, as a foreigner coming to a new country, so I embraced it all. And but one of the things I had to sign, because they don't want you to be a burden on the state, and they don't want you to take a job away from a Frenchman. So I had to sign a document saying I will not take a job, but I can write, and I can sell those books online and stuff like that, because that's not taking a job from anybody else. And also, I think artists, I know an American photographer that got a special visa because he's a photographer. And he said, I have I guess a unique voice in my photography, and he got a special visa for that. So they really seem to like artists. But yeah, so officially I'm retired. Though I still do some design consulting for people back in the States once in a while, but the focus really is, I guess, the writing, which is good and certainly occupies a lot of my time.
I like your explanation of math, science, and art being design. That I hadn't thought about it, and I like that inclusion of those things in there. Like then I started thinking about Michelangelo then, and just I think he's the guy that did the helicopter pictures and
No,
all these
that's
other
Da Vinci.
Da Vinci. Yes, Da Vinci,
Michelangelo was a freaking genius as
the
as
painter.
an artist and a sculptor, but Da Vinci is in a whole nother category. The math, the science, the art. He only painted a few pictures, but he had early drawings of the helicopter and just ridiculous things. He's just a special character. Ken Burns is doing a documentary on him.
Oh,
I think it's coming out in maybe November or something. I saw him being interviewed for that, and that'll be a lovely thing to see, because he does great work with that. But I think this might be his first non-American subject.
okay.
So yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, I put Da Vinci in that same category as like Newton, where it seems like maybe it's easy to look back at a time like that from our present and think, wow, look at all these things they were thinking about and doing. All of that is still available to us
Oh my gosh,
now,
all
but
this
it
stuff,
just seems like
looking at the stars and putting all that stuff together, it's just incredible. Yeah. I mean, we've got our own people that are very special, and genius might be overused, but boy, back then, it's just I can't, with the limited instruments they had, or they even came up with their own instruments to do that stuff. It's just phenomenal.
with designing for a factory, how much of the like technical knowledge do you have to make a equipment that I guess sorts or cooks or bags
All of it.
snack food?
Yeah.
So
So again, all this design experience, I didn't have this vision for 30 years later. But my dad invented this snack food he called Nutrinuts back in 1963, and it became just like a family secret and a family snack. But I think his motivation was he had 6 kids, and he feared impending dental bills. So I
mm,
wanted to keep them away from candy. And at that time, McDonald's and other junk food places were popping up. And so he wanted to come up with something that was just as addicting as candy and junk food, but a little healthier. So he was a chemist, and I still have no idea how he did it, but he said, I'm going to take popcorn, which is popular, and I'm going to do something different with it. So he came up with a way to half pop it. So instead of becoming a big fluffy piece of popcorn, it became this crunchy golden nugget, and it was addicting. And it was just a fabulous thing. And then he tried to get it patented a few times, and those things fell through. And those are ridiculous. The reasons the patent offices came by, I have all the paperwork and stuff, was just silly. But as time got on, it was he had some companies that were interested in it, but they didn't offer him a deal that was very tempting for my dad. So it remained a family snack. And then as my nieces and nephews started coming into the family, they heard about these Nutrinuts, but never had a chance to try them. And I thought that was a shame. So I asked my dad for the recipe. And I was living in LA at the time, and the first time I made them, it's a dangerous process, a bit explosive, but
is there a pressure cooker involved then?
Huh?
A pressure cooker involved?
No, unfortunately, no. You had to hold on for your life to the lid. And I almost burned down my apartment the first time. But the product came out great. So I'm laughing as smoke is filling my house, and then the alarms are going off and stuff like that. But the product came out great. And then I used those as kind of a calling card in Hollywood. And at the time I was studying at the Beverly Hills Playhouse. So I had about 80 people who were my test market, and they went crazy over it just like we did. And this time it was probably maybe 20 years since anybody had this stuff. And then I started doing research and found out that there was nothing like it on the market still. And so I talked to my dad about it, and he gave me permission to go forward. So I started a company and did a bunch of research, and for how we're going to package. Of course, I did the logo and the design of the packaging and stuff like that. And then we hooked up with some larger companies. They have when a small company works with a big company, they call it co-packing. So they have all the equipment and stuff, and you train them how to do it. But this one company, we were working great for a while, but they couldn't maintain the quality. So I decided to take it on again on my own instead of just doing the sales. I customized equipment for this particular how to make our product, and then looked for a place. So we found an abandoned warehouse. Took me about 6 months to find something that was correct, that would work for us. And so I turned this abandoned warehouse into this gorgeous factory. You could eat off the floor. It was really nice, and we went organic with the product. So you have to certain levels of inspections and stuff you have to prepare for and stuff like that. So not only were we making a food product, we were making an organic food product, and we were in California, so you have many more layers of certifications you got to go through. But we did it, and I did this for about 15 years. And I designed the equipment where I could do it as a one-man operation. So that really wasn't my goal in life. But for a number of years, I called it Hell Week. So while I was back in New Jersey, when I had to care for my mom, I would fly back every few months and go through Hell Week and crank out a bunch that could handle our customers for a number of months. So it worked out pretty well, but it was pretty stressful. So all the design certainly came into play during that adventure.
Is that something that's still on the market? Did you sell the brand off, or?
We never sold the brand off. We had a lovely opportunity. So this thing with my mom started in 2011. And then we had a venture capital company come after us that specialized in snack foods. And they really liked our product. But it didn't work out. And that would have been perfect timing. And I'm not sure how great of a deal we would have got, but it didn't work out. So I kept it going for another couple of years. But taking care of my mom was the priority. So I let the business kind of fizzle out, and then we rented out the factory. Actually made more money renting out the factory than we do with the product. And then we sold the factory a little over a year ago. So that's done. So the last time it was on the market was probably 2014, though we still have people asking about it, which is lovely because I still have a Facebook page for it. Was I renamed it Grandpa Poe's Originals. And so we were the snack of the day in the Rachel Ray show and had national distribution, and we were growing like crazy for a while early on. So, but it's a rough business. You're against the big guys. If you start making any kind of a mark in the market, the big guys either come after you or they try to squash you.
Big
And so
snack.
we had to deal with that stuff. So
Nice. Wow. So the world does not have Nutrinuts in them right now?
or Grandpa Poe's Original. There's a couple of copycats that came out. One of them actually said it was funny because the venture capital company went with one of the copycats who made an inferior product. But I started checking out their PR stuff after this company, because this company took them over and infused a lot of money into their marketing and stuff like that. And their PR said, "Oh, they invented this product and all this other stuff," when my dad invented it like 40 years earlier. So that was kind of funny, but that's I guess that's part of the business. So I didn't get too upset with it. We still make a better product, and I think these guys knew it, but yeah, it just, life goes on, and I did it for about 15 years, and it was a lot of fun and exhausting, and we had highs and lows, and it was just time to move on.
How'd you find yourself in France?
I had an ex-girlfriend who put the bug in my ear. She always wanted to retire in France, and I'm second generation Italian, and my grandfather came over and never went back. Never went back, actually. So in 1995, I was working on an Italian project, a theater project. It was a stage adaptation of a Fellini play. And I really got into my Italian roots playing this role. And so I decided to check out this village. It was a little mountaintop village in southern Italy. And so I started making plans to take a trip over there to check out the family roots. And I talked my dad into it. At that point, he was suffering from heart disease and not doing great, but he just turned 80. So for his 80th birthday, I wanted to take him on this trip. And it took me a while to talk him into it. I didn't know how bad he was because I was living in LA and my family members didn't want to tell me how serious things were, but he was a trooper and he really wanted to go. And so I shot a documentary of it, and eventually I wrote a screenplay that was based on it, that was a little more fictional. And we cleared the family name. We get to this village. At that point, it was only 200 people left. I think the largest it's ever been was 400 people, we found out. And the entire police department was one guy named Vito, who happened to be the town historian. So he knew all about my family right away. It was like on the tip of his tongue. As soon as he heard America, he starts launching into these stories about my great-grandfather, who was the mayor of this village back in probably the 1870s. And it was just great. And so he showed us these records that the marriages he conducted as the mayor. My great-grandfather was named Natali because he was born on Christmas Day. That part we knew. But he took us to the house. The house was still there. It was unoccupied, but I didn't want to push it because we were already kind of taking up a lot of their time. He seemed to enjoy it, but we didn't want to overextend our welcome. So we didn't ask to go into the house, but we hung out the backyard. And so I have a picture of my dad knocking on his dad's door in Italy. And it's just, it just killed me. And he had, he was suffering, but boy, he said it was one of the highlights of his life. And it was great. It was just a lovely trip. And it was just the two of us. I invited my other brothers. I thought it would be a great thing for the guys to go, but they weren't interested. And so it was just me and my dad for 16 days exploring Italy. And it was great. So
that trip got you over to Europe and then to France. I mean, same tectonic plate, but.
Oh yeah, sorry. So I felt very comfortable in Italy. And then this girlfriend put the idea in my head about France. And so my great grandmother on my mother's side married a Frenchman. But we didn't know that much about my mother's family because both of her parents died before she was married. And so I knew she was Irish and French, but we didn't know how French. And so I came over here for the first time and really had a nice time. We had the girlfriend had friends in Paris. And so we spent a week in Provence with French people, and then a week in Paris at their home. And it was just lovely. And I felt actually more comfortable in France. So I started thinking that that might be a really cool thing. And then the next year, we came back, and then we also went to Italy looking for a place that we could maybe buy as a vacation home. And then the next year, we were no longer a couple, but we were still friends. And she said she found a place near where I live now, but we stayed at an Airbnb. And at that point, we were going to maybe do it as a business thing. So we would buy a vacation home. She comes when she wants, I come when I want. The rest of the time, we would rent it out. And so we stayed 5 days in this little village called Pézenas. And I fell in love with the village. The people are lovely. And then I found this house. As soon as I walked in, I said, that's it. This is my home. And fortunately, prices are pretty good. And but it took about 17 months to navigate the French financial system because it was very difficult at that time, especially for an American, to get a mortgage. And the mortgage rate was just ridiculously low. And but it took several months. So almost a year and a half later, I came back to sign the papers. And at that point, my mom had passed, and it was time to take on a new adventure. And so I came over here, and it's been great.
Is that where you think you're going to end up? Is over there, or
Yeah, yeah. As soon as I found this apartment, I said I didn't want to be morbid, but I said this is where I will die, and hopefully not in the near future. It's a love, that they have such a good outlook on the way of life. I mean, they live, and living is more important than working. Sometimes that's frustrating, but they got it right. So when this process took so long to get the bank loan going, and even to sign the papers, there was delay after delay after delay. And I wanted to get really angry, but I had a broker up in Paris that helped me through this whole process. And I never got angry with anybody, but I wanted to. And I asked him, I said, is this normal? And he says, absolutely, it's normal. Don't take it personally. In France, if they have anything to do other than work, they do it. And once you understand that and get used to it, it's a great way to live. So if you're here and you're ambitious and stuff, you could probably do really well. But I mean, just to sit, they have these 2-hour lunches, which are like religion over here. And you really have to schedule your day around that because everything pretty much shuts down from noon to 2, which is lovely because the kids come home from school. So they have a family meal at home. The dinner probably isn't as important, but if you're in a restaurant and you go and you get a table, let's say 7:30 when they open up, that's your table for the night. Nobody tries to push you out of there. They're all very chill. Southern France may be a little different than Paris, though I enjoyed Paris as well. But Southern France is just very cool. And I had when I first came, I went to a vendage. It was mid-September in 2016. And I was invited to a vendage, and I said, great, what's a vendage? And they said they celebrate the harvest. So when the grapes are picked in September, if it's that particular type of grape, they kind of celebrate the harvest. So I went to the chateau. I stepped into like a French movie. You go up these grand staircase, and you're at a French chateau. And if you wanted to, you could pick grapes for a while. I said, sure, I want to experience all this stuff. So I was out picking grapes for a couple hours. And while I was picking grapes, a jazz band was following us through the fields. I go, this is crazy, but it was lovely. So you're working, but you're having a great time. And so after that, You get the band set up at the chateau, and all these villagers are coming with all the side dishes. And the barbecue, they've got, I guess, a pig and probably lamb and stuff going on the barbecue all day. And all the villagers came and are having this celebration. So they bring all the side dishes. So inside the chateau, you just had everything from, salads and, of course, breads and things like this. And then they had all the dessert table and stuff like that. And of course, they had great wine. So they're serving wine the entire day. So the end of the night, I was good friends with the guy that invited me, who was actually my notaire for the apartment. And the guy doing the barbecue, his name was Hassan, and he spoke some English. And at the end of the night, the band is still playing, but almost everybody else was gone. Since I was invited by this gentleman, I was kind of like invited to stay. And so Hassan and I are sitting together. And at this point, we're probably a little toasted from all the wine. And he says, Mark, you're American, yes? And I said, yeah. And he says, you people work too much. You need to stop and take this all in, because this is the life in the south of France. And I started crying. It was just gorgeous. And I said, I'm home. These guys are great. They've really shown me a new way to live. And it was just beautiful. And that guy, and I tell him every time I see him, at least once a year, every time I see him, I say, I share your story as much as I can, because for an American to come here and have someone tell me that, it was just a beautiful moment. So yes, this is where I will end up.
Okay. It's nice that there's different types of ways of life in the world. I can appreciate that. And then if you're fortunate and free enough to be able to choose the one, or see how they are and then choose the one you want to live in, I think that's a great idea. I think it's a great thing to be able to have. When do you think France got this cultural, not identity, but just their cultural mindset? When do you think that the current mindset they have was kind of the majority idea? Like, was it before World War I? Was it after?
I think probably after their revolution, after they got rid of the kings and queens and all that business, that might have been the start of it.
So you're probably not going to get a Napoleon if you're having a 2-hour lunch and don't want to work that much.
Well, maybe if he scheduled his war around, I guess, the 2-hour lunch. But I don't think it's that unique for France, because the Italians and the Greeks, and they're all this stuff's really important. The social life is more important than the work. And I think the wages over here are probably lower than what we expect, let's say in the US, or maybe you're surprised by that. But that's fine. I mean, their healthcare system is ridiculous. It's just, they care about your health more than they care about the money. And so if you're here for 3 months, I don't even think you need to own anything. If you live here for 3 months, you can register for the health system. And that gives you what they call a carte vitale. And if you go to the hospital, they take care of you, and it's either free or really low. I know some friends who had to go through some things, because there's a lot of retirees here. So there's some issues that come up. And if they don't have health insurance in France, still the price out of pocket is ridiculous. Someone had it was an American girl, and I don't think she was registered here yet. She had her gallbladder removed. And it was like 100 euros for the hospital stay, the surgery, everything.
100 euros. That's like $1 million.
That's like $110. It was, and then I had an emergency with a tooth early on. And I don't remember if I had the carte vitale at the time, but I went and they fixed it really quickly. And then they said in France what it was costing. And I thought, oh, that's going to be 150 euros. And it was 15 euros, I think. And that was it. And then if you have the carte vitale, France will pay you back a good portion of that. And then if you have a mutual on top of that, which is supplemental insurance, which is also very reasonable, you'll get even more, if not all of that back. So
how do they afford that?
Well, it's a socialist country. So we pay higher taxes. Everybody, you pay 20% on almost everything. So the taxes are high, but still very reasonable. And for whatever your emergencies and stuff could cost, it's worth a trip anyway. But yeah, I don't know how a lot of people. There's certain complaints with certain governments that come in. They're saying, oh, eventually we're going to hit bankruptcy. I don't know. I mean, we have our own problems in the U.S. with the debt and all that kind of stuff. So um, I think what they do here is better as far as the healthcare system and stuff like that. And they really want the medicine is really uh, dirt cheap because they want you to stay healthy, so you're not a burden on the system. So even if you go in and if you don't get all the money back for the medicine, I remember my girlfriend, she had to get something. They said, "Well, your prescription's expired. You're going to have to pay cash for this." And she said, "That's fine." And she had no idea, and it was like €4. And so it's just it's amazing. It's a whole new life if you open up to that. So it's just gas is higher here, but the gas efficiency in the cars is amazing. So you have some certain things you have to get used to, but boy, it's pretty good.
You paint a good picture.
Yeah,
I'm not sold on it, however, but I like that there are different options available. And
yeah, yeah.
certainly the idea of France is, I think for the American thinking about it, they have some romantic ideas of France. So that's nice.
Yeah.
Did
And
you
that
write
stuff's true.
did you write your book? I know you've done the documentary, so you've done the screenplay writing, but did you write your book in France or did you write it in the US?
Yeah, the screenplay work was earlier when I was in Hollywood. Um, my mom passed in 2014, and I took lots of notes because that's just my training. So I took lots of notes and photos and videos because I knew I was going to do something with this. And I wanted to record family history because I was privy to a lot of really, really precious moments and wonderful conversations with my mother that my other family members missed, and I didn't want them to miss all of it. So I recorded a lot of it. And then while I was going through this, I had being a baby boomer, a lot of us are going through this stuff. So I had one particular friend actually was going through it with her father. And we spoke, and I gave her some tips about what I was doing, and she seemed to get some benefit out of it. And so I said, I think a book is going to be the best thing to get it out to people and hopefully inspire people. It's not a how-to book. My goal was to just tell a good story, and if people got something out of it, great. But it's a what I did book, and some people do learn some stuff from it because for a son to take on the 24/7 caregiving is pretty rare, and my approach was pretty unique as I'm finding out. But my mom deserved a good send off. So she almost died in 2011, and I moved back and decided to make her last years happy and healthy as healthy as we could. And she lived another 3.5 years. So that was it was good. And for me, not having kids. I had no kids and was never married. So my first kid was this 89-year-old mother. And so that was quite an adjustment for me as well.
When you were taking notes on it, how did you organize that when you were taking it?
Just whatever happened at the time. If there was a really funny conversation, I said, I gotta take this down. I don't want to lose it. I didn't know, I didn't organize anything except for I pretty much recorded it as it happened. And
So like a journal then?
yeah, I guess. Yeah, but I would. Yeah, I mean, that would be the closest thing. But if I sit there, okay, here's a funny story, or here's something I didn't know. Let me write down just a note so I wouldn't forget whatever that thought was, and then some of the dialogue I wrote down verbatim. And But I couldn't write the book. I'm a really kind of an emotional, sentimental guy, and especially when it comes to family. So there was no way I could write the book for a while. So
Yeah.
it wasn't until I moved to France, so it was a couple years later, that once I decided it was going to be a book, it was going to be, I decided that it would be memoir, and memoir, I'd never written a book before and I never wrote memoir. So I had to study memoir writing. So I read a lot of memoir, and I studied with a memoir teacher and wanted to get a good grasp on that genre, and then really started writing. So it was a couple years into that. I had a lot of the notes, and then as you're writing, it's really cool because just I have a really good memory, and all these things started popping in. I said, "These are great. If it's appropriate for this book or this particular chapter, great." So my most difficult part with the book was the structure. So I had the chronological story of me taking care of my mom. That lasted about 3.5 years. But then I wanted to infuse it with backstory of things that happened in our life, either my mom or mom and me, or my family's life, that helped support what was going on in the present day. So that was the most challenging part, where to put these things structurally and to make it make sense. So once I got it to pretty good shape, I started going after publishers, and I got a publisher. I actually had two publishers that were interested. And so I chose one that was more interested in the quality of the book as opposed to getting it out quickly. And we worked on it together for about 1.5 years. And I really liked that idea. So I worked with two different editors, and they were great because then you have someone with a fresh set of eyes looking at your story, and that's going to be your audience eventually. So they were great and very helpful. And it's still my voice and stuff, but they help with certain things that might have been confusing, or saying, well, this story, I had a lot of, let's say, stories about food, and they said, let's see if we can combine those all in one chapter instead of having 3 or 4 chapters about food, even though food played a big part of our lives growing up and during this adventure with my mom. But those kind of things were really good to hear. And the book came out great. It debuted on Mother's Day last year, and the response has been great. The sales are good. I would like them to be better, but the reviews have been excellent, and it's won 8 literary awards so far. So that's a real good indicator that it's pretty good quality, and there's a lot of humor in it. The humor played a big part of our lives growing up, and both of my parents were pretty funny people, and fortunately they passed that on to their kids. And so people have said they laugh out loud and they cry out loud at the same time. So it's good. If people don't want to get into caregiving, they could certainly be entertained by some of the stories. And that was the goal, I guess, was to inspire others to take this on, because it's something we don't do that much in the States. And it's going to become a crisis. They say, I think, over 50,000 people are 80 years or older right now in the US. And by 2050, it's like 426 million people will be 80 years or older around the world. So this is something I think really have to deal with, because the system can't handle it. And so I think families really have to get back to what they used to and take care of their family.
It's only 50,000 in the US? Wow, I thought that would have been higher.
It may be over. I'm not sure when that stat was, but when I was doing research and stuff. So currently it might have been a few years ago, but still that's pretty good for, what do we have? 350,000. So 50,000, seventh of them are over 80, and it's only getting get worse because we're living longer. So yeah.
What are your key takeaways if you're talking to somebody about memoir writing being different than screenplay and just regular novel type writing? What do you find the difference? What do you need to know?
I'm trying to think of I can't think of the formula right now with my the memoir teacher taught, but it's not plot driven like a book or a screenplay or a novel. It is it is for me, it was really a discovery process, and not only a discovery process of what I was going through, but really about me and also my mom and various family members, because all these memories started coming in. You're going, well, that's interesting, and that makes sense now because of 20 years later, these things happened and stuff like that. So memoir, they actually, I think, say is really a self-discovery process. And it was important for me to write an honest book. And so there's some things that are not very flattering, especially for me and a few of my family members. But I think I take the most hits. But I wanted to be truthful. And so there's the good and the bad and the ugly, and but most of it's fun and uplifting and stuff like that. And people have said uh, everything from this is a raw, honest tale of caregiving, but also it's like sitting down at a table, kitchen table, and sitting and having a conversation with Mark. The book is really, I guess, conversational and easy to read and stuff like that. So that's a nice compliment. But there's it's important for me to put humor throughout. But yeah, memoir is, if you get into it, it can be raw and ugly. So you maybe start out with your first drafts and just put it all out there, but it's not, there's no, it's not meant to be, let's say, revenge or anything like that. So, because there are some people who had, let's say, bad upbringings, or they were victims in some ways, and so this is a way for them to vent, and that's not interesting, I don't think, for the reader. So you want to make it an interesting story, an engaging story, and hopefully an entertaining story.
So did you start out then with the timeline and then go off of there to do like the things from the past?
Yeah. I wrote as, let's say, as accurately as I could, the actual journey, let's say from
Okay.
day one on. And then, I have memories from when I was 2 years old. So I said, okay, how is that going to help? And my mother was a shopaholic. And so one of my memories at 2 years old was I went shopping with her on one of her shopping marathons and ended up uh, escaping and crossing over a 4-lane highway to explore what was happening on the other side of the freeway and stuff like that. So that was a good memory, because I didn't like shopping. I still don't like shopping. I know it's a necessary thing, but my mother loved shopping. And so shopping was a big issue with our whole family and growing up and stuff like that. So, and those were fun. And then I don't know. I mean, once you open that door, for me, it was no problem. They just flood in. And this all happened. I started doing these things for my dad. This will be, the next book's going to focus more on my dad. There's a bunch of my dad in this one. For his 75th birthday, he was a real tough guy to buy something for, because he didn't need anything. And so for his 75th birthday, I said, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to give him 75 memories. So I committed to that. And I'm thinking, oh my God, how am I going to come up with this? But I started my earliest memory, and they came flooding in, and I did them, I think, somewhat chronologically, and I had to edit them down to 75. And there were some nasty memories in there. My dad and I had some problems growing up. But they were all important to our relationship. And so in that memory book was the start of this whole thing of recording, I think, family history. And my dad was so moved by this, even though there were some ugly memories that we had to clear up, his recollection versus mine. And but he was so moved by it, and he talked to the other kids. And then they were all calling me saying, what was this thing you did? And so then I did one for my mom, and then I've done one for all the siblings and my aunts and uncles and things like that, whenever they hit a big birthday. So when they hit 30, 40, 50 or whatever, when my aunts each hit 90 or 80, I gave them a book. And They began as a typewritten page, numbered, 1 through 75, up to really elaborate design projects that everybody was looking forward to. And then when my nieces and nephews got married, I didn't have enough memories for them, but I asked other people to help join in. So I put together these elaborate wedding gifts for them. And it was very cool to see their reactions, but also to feel, I guess, appreciated, because people had these very fond, most of them fond memories of whoever received this product and stuff like that. So memory books were a huge deal for us, and so I guess that got the ball rolling for me as far as recording family history and stuff like that, when I started seeing the reactions to people. So there'll be more of that in the next book, I think.
Nice. When you were in the process of writing, how did you set up your day? Did you set a certain amount of time aside to write? Were you looking to cover a topic in a writing session? Were you looking to do a certain amount of words? How did you keep yourself going through the process of a whole book?
Yeah, I think that people are not going to get much, let's say, good advice from writing. No, I don't sit down and say I need to do, 2,000 or 1,000 words a day or something like that. But when I get in a groove, I go. And so sometimes there's no sleep. I just go as long as I can, or till my eyes, now with the computer, you're burning out. But I had an idea for a screenplay when I was back in LA. And I stayed up for 4 nights to finish that screenplay. I had to get it out, and it's pretty good. And then I had to do, of course, the gift is the rewriting, and that's when the really good stuff, once you hone it down and stuff like that. But I had to get this thing out, and it was a comedy, and I was just having the best time. And I don't remember if I slept for 4 days, but I finished it and said, "This is great. Now I can sleep, and then I'm going to look at it with fresh eyes." And then do some really heavy duty lifting and rewriting and stuff like that. So with this book, it was the same kind of thing. Once I got into the groove, it was going. And I know my girlfriend wasn't happy about it, because I was writing all the time. Even when I went to visit her at her house, and she had a good point. She said, "This is not fair. You don't spend that much time here. When you're here, I don't want you sitting there writing." So I had to curtail it a little bit when I was with her. But when I'm here most of the time. So during the week is writing week, or I always have a notepad handy, or if I don't, I have the iPhone. I'll put little notes. So whenever something comes in my head, I want to record it, because I've had sometimes when you're sleeping, you go, "Oh, that's great. That's so great. I'm never going to forget it." And of course, you totally forget it. And when I was doing stand up, I was writing jokes all the time, and in the middle of the night, something would hit me, and I would scribble it down on a pad, and then have to go through some code breaking in the morning and try to figure this stuff out. So it took me a while to learn how to write in the dark, where I could actually read this stuff. But I did try a tape recorder for a while. I said, "Okay, tape recorder is going to be great." So you get up and in the middle of the night and you record this thing, and in the morning you listen to it. It's like, "How is that? What is that?" So it was back to scribbling for me. So that's good, because even last night I had to write. Something came up in the middle of the night, and I just reached over, and I've got a pen at the side of the bed, and just started scribbling. So that really helps. But to really knuckle down, my goal is I was going to start in September, which I did, was to finish my dad's book, at least the first draft, by the end of the year. And get back, because it's been a couple years. Most of the time I spend now is marketing and doing all the other stuff for the cup of tea on the commode. And I produce small teaser videos. I've probably done 160 of those things on the YouTube channel, and I post probably at least twice a week something going on with the book. And then as these awards come in, I've got to update everything from the author profile on Amazon through Goodreads and BookBub, and it just goes. So I love the accolades are really nice, but it's a lot of extra work. And so, but I have been writing my dad's book, and I've got to really turn off everything else and really focus on that. So I did some work on it today, and it's interesting because there's going to be some overlap. I think the last draft of A Cup of Tea in the Commode, I think I cut around 4,000 words out of it and just said, these are going to be more appropriate for another book. Because it was, I think, more about my dad. And so I have a lot of the book, and I have notes. My dad passed 27 years ago, and I only had 8 days with him. But I took a lot of notes during that time also. And as I'm going through these things, because I talk to my siblings, and of course they have different recollections, and I think my memory is better. But I have the notes to support it. So I'm reading through some of these notes that I did really about 27 years ago. And it's like the detail is great because there's no way I would have remembered all that stuff if I didn't write this stuff down. And back then, we didn't have the iPhones, and I didn't have opportunity to shoot video and stuff like that. I did shoot some photographs of my dad that I never printed because he was going, and he didn't look great. And though he smiled, it doesn't put him in a flattering light. So I didn't want to. I've never printed those things. So again, it's by inspiration. But this thing, I said, I'm definitely getting this thing finished by the end of the year. So I have to get cranking.
About how many words is A Cup of Tea on the Commode?
Probably around 65,000, something like that, and
Okay.
lots of pictures. My publishers, I said, "Do you want some photos?" And they said, "Yeah." I said, "All right." So I sent them about 20 photos for them to pick and choose, and they put them all in. So there's lots of photos. So it's 320 pages. Probably 10 or so of those and it's well spaced, and it's a big book. I mean, the type is big, but I also have a large print version of it.
Mm-hmm.
It flows pretty quick. You can read it in one sitting if you want to say that. And then the audio book, I did the audio book about 6 months after the print came out. And I made some adjustments actually. When you're rereading it, you're going, okay, I can make this funnier or more accurate or read better and stuff like that. And so the audio book is 7.5 hours. So if they really want, it would take you, 1 day to read the thing in the book, or 7.5 hours to listen to the audio book. So.
What was your audio setup like? Did you just do that at home, or did you?
Yeah, I set up a studio here. I have a small room that was a closet, and I kind of made it my recording studio. And the microphone that I'm using right now is the mic I recorded on it. And so I used Audition, I think. Adobe Audition was what I recorded on. But again, YouTube is just a freaking gift. When I said, how do I record an audiobook? And there are all kinds of lessons and things like that. And I have, the acting experience, which helped. But, again, with this book, in certain moments, I'm just bawling. And so I had to really use all my acting skills and experience to keep it interesting and not sappy. And then I wrote the music that I used for all the teasers. And also I put that in the audio book. And so there's a nice A Cup of Tea on the Commode tune. And I added some fun sound effects in the audiobook. I thought I could make that a little more interesting, a little more entertaining. So, so it was, again, every new adventure. It's like when you take on all the different social media platforms. I go on and learn what I can before venturing out to that stuff, because I have everything from Facebook to TikTok, Pinterest, and Instagram, and Tumblr, and my own website that gets updated all the time. And so it's just the marketing and the social media stuff is pretty time consuming.
Yeah, it's nice because you can do a lot of it yourself and learn a lot about it. So it keeps your mind going. Your mind's fresh on things because you're learning.
Yeah.
And then you're doing stuff that's interesting to you, that it's probably, I mean, if you paid somebody to be interested in it, they might be as interested as you are in it. But since you're so personally invested in it, you're definitely interested. So you're going to put that extra bit of work into it.
Yeah. And when I was doing the book, I have where my house was built in 1540, so the stone walls are really thick, but the ceilings, I hear everything upstairs. So the floors are really thin, I think. And so when I was setting up to record, above this closet where I set things up is my neighbor. I only have one neighbor upstairs, but that's their kitchen. And so I'd have to wait till everything calmed down. So it'd be about 11 o'clock at night, my time. And I had everything set up, ready to go. And then I would hear the washing machine go upstairs. So that blew that night. And or something else going on. And so it was rough to get the whole thing recorded. And then so what I would do is I would record as best I could, sometimes till 3, 4 in the morning. And then you listen to that. So the next day would be editing and making any corrections that I have to re-record. And then you would hear that, you're really petering out at 3 o'clock. So you can't do that anymore. You got to give it, 2 really good hours. Or if I knew those people were gone and I had a full day, that would be great. But that was another challenge that you don't think about. And you're sitting there go, oh, there's a washing machine going, because you don't want any of that noise happening.
Yeah. Wow. Well then, 2 small questions to kind of round things out. Where do you think creativity comes from?
I think it's instinct. You can learn certain things, but I think you gotta have it in you. It's like we talked about Michelangelo and Da Vinci and those guys. They had something in them that just was pushing them to do something. And you can be exposed to all these things. Like my mom, I have a chapter in the book called The Champion of the Arts. And so we were exposed to a lot of really cool things. And my dad was more into math and science. So he would say, oh, did you know? And I don't know if you knew this. So during the World's Fair, the Pieta that's in the Vatican, Michelangelo's, mother and Mary and Christ, gorgeous statue. That statue to me is more beautiful than the David, though they say the David is the most perfect one. That was sent over to New York for the World's Fair, I believe. Don't check me on these things. But he said, so that while it was in the boat, they loaded up the shipping crate with enough ping pong balls that if that ship went down, the Pieta would have floated. Wow. And so science and math came together for that one, to figure that one out, to protect Michelangelo's, statue. And those are the fun things that, my dad would say. And it's also, when you make cement, it's a bucket of cement mix, a bucket of sand, and a bucket of water. And that makes 1 bucket of cement, because all those molecules all fill in the gaps perfectly.
Really?
Yeah. So those are the kind of things my dad would put in our heads. Though he was pretty creative. He told a lot of funny jokes and with food and stuff like that. He was certainly entertaining. And then the Nutrinuts, of course, was a lovely thing. But yeah, it was a great household to grow up in. There was just a lot of really fun stuff. So I would have to say it's got to be in you. You can certainly refine it and I think expand upon it by studying or just doing. So I used to carve. In high school, I really got into furniture making back, and I wish they would bring this stuff back. We had an incredible industrial arts wing of my high school, and my most, I guess, best teacher that I had, the most impressive one to me, was my shop teacher. He taught me not only about how to make beautiful things, but philosophy and life and things like that. And he was a great guy. And so I made this award-winning furniture. I just got into woodworking. And so I made some just beautiful items because I enjoyed doing it so much. And he was a good teacher and we had really good equipment. And then I started carving. And I could see, for whatever reason, three-dimensional things were easy for me to visualize and also to make. So I take a block of wood, and he was amazed by this. And this is the guy who's been teaching this stuff for years. And he hired me to carve him an eagle for his house and furniture and things like that. And that just came to me. So I don't know, that has to be a gift. If you say a gift from God or the spirits or whatever. So I think some of that stuff is in you. For Michelangelo to look at a block of marble and say that I know what's in there, I just got to chisel away to find out what it is. I mean, that's a gift. And of course, he had to study and all the things they had to do with studying cadavers and how the muscles and the veins and all that kind of stuff work. And Da Vinci did a lot of that stuff too. It was still something in him saying, there's a block of marble. Let's find out what's in there. So something was speaking to him.
Yeah, you got to find those talents, and you won't find them unless you try those different things. I think it is important.
Yeah, you've got to be exposed to that and say, okay, what am I, like Bruce Springsteen was not good in school. And I don't know if he failed or anything, but he said, no, I was like a loser. Nobody thought I had any talent, and I didn't have any talent in what they were teaching. But boy, does he have a talent. And I don't know if you've read his memoir. It's just like his songs. It's just beautiful. It's beautifully written. I mean, the guy he's got a gift. And of course, he worked his butt off for it, but math and science was not his thing. But music and poetry certainly, and storytelling certainly was. So I think our educational system has to be open to let's say, how do we discover what these people are really good at and nurture that part of them? Because not everybody's going to fit into the math, science, English block. There's some other things. And so that's, I guess, the challenge. That's where the good teachers come in. Because even though, let's say, Mr. Thomas was a good shop teacher, he was really interested in how I thought and what I wanted to do. And he was very happy that I wanted to go to medical school and not become a cabinet maker. And he was a champion for that. And then he actually hired me to work for him and his company during the summers. And it was great. So there you go, the woodshop teacher. And there's a lovely book about what Shopcraft for Soulcraft was a really important book too. And there's something about working with your hands that is just fabulous. And a lot of us that get into business and the corporations and all that business, no longer, it's good to get your hands dirty and make something out of clay or carve or, fix a car or a bicycle or something like that. It's just, there's something about that's really, I think, important.
Yeah, maybe you could blend that together and make a medical cabinet, and then you've fused medical school and woodworking.
There you go.
There you go. Or you might. I expected more from a stand-up guy to appreciate that, but that's okay. That you gotta test them. You gotta test them. I haven't tested that one.
Yeah.
The vocational school, definitely. I wish they still had that.
Yeah.
That was a big deal for me in high school, was being able to do auto mechanics, and then they had building trades and the like the farm type classes, FAA, that type of thing.
Yeah.
FFA. FAA is the Aviation Administration, but Future Farmers of America is FFA. So that, and then they had like food service and some other things. It was good stuff. I think my best teacher, I liked my auto mechanics teacher, but I think my best teacher was probably my 11th grade English teacher and creative writing teacher. So yeah, it's good to remember the people that had the greatest impacts on your life.
Yeah.
I think. Mm-hmm. So creativity. Nice. All right. Another small question. What do you think the reason that we are here living this life is?
That's a small question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just to round things out.
Well, I don't know. I have to. What was nice about, let's say, writing this book and now the time away from it. Um, if I changed anything, let's say earlier in my life, if I, because back in design, of course, we had one of the first Apple computers and things like that. And one of the firms I worked for in LA actually had Apple as a client. If I invested at Apple back in 1984, I would have made zillions, or even in Tesla when it was just starting out, and I really liked their stock and stuff like that. Or if I got this particular role in a movie, or if the snack food company became this multi-million-dollar thing, um, I wouldn't have been able to do what I did for my mom. And I would not have changed that or wanted anything different. I was available to do it. I made the choice, but uh, when I made that decision, it seemed like the world all came together to support it, and it was lovely. And my siblings were great. And in the beginning, it seemed like because my mom wanted to check out, she really wanted to leave this earth, and I have a chapter in the book called "A Silent Scream," and I think it was a cry for help, and she wanted her kids to come back and rescue her. And so it seemed like I rescued her. And then upon reflection, after writing the book, and I think maybe even when I was doing the audio book, it might have been my mom rescuing me, because at that point I didn't have a family. I had no children, and my only purpose really at that point was my snack food company. My acting career was really slowing down because I was aging out, and I had a good run, but you're at a point where either you're a star or you're not, and so that was uh, leaving, and the snack food company was struggling at the time, and this was the most important thing I've done in my life. And all those experiences in my life before that all helped support uh, uh, this caregiving adventure. And so while so that I think was the purpose of my life up to that point. And I have a chapter I talk about angels, and I think my angels were helping me, because there's many times in my life I should not have lived. Some crazy things happened, and I was protected, I think, because of this. So this was a nice purpose at that point. Since then, I would say right now, um, me getting this story out and hopefully inspiring other people to take this on um, is my purpose now. And um, and it's been lovely, because I've been doing a lot of these interviews and podcasts, and I get to share the stories of my folks, but especially my mom. And um, it keeps her in the present, and it's a lovely gift for me to be able to share these stories and get the reactions and the reviews. The personal notes I've received from people are just humbling and wonderful, and some of them very raw, but this story is resonating with so many people, and it's just very cool. So that keeps me going, and I think that's the reason why I'm here and why you and I are talking. I think tonight, at least tonight in France.
Yeah.
So
Very nice. What's the best way for people to find your book and to follow your work?
if they if they Google "A Cup of Tea on the Commode," the website is .org, but we're everywhere. I've been pretty aggressive with the marketing, so it's everywhere again, from Facebook to Pinterest and all that other stuff. "Cup of Tea on the Commode" is the book. It's on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble, and I think a lot of other online stores. It's in a bunch of other stores, I think, around the world. Our publisher has a lovely distributor out of Chicago, has this thing in stores. So I don't know what language or what money denomination they're using, but it's out there. And hopefully we'll start getting it translated into other languages and stuff like that. That's something I'm working on now as well. And so "A Cup of Tea on the Commode" is there, and they can contact me through the website. And YouTube, the YouTube channel is A Cup of Tea in the Commode. There's a lot of funny videos there. On the website, there's certainly a lot of information. And there's if they read the book, there's a section I call bonus material. So there's a lot of things I talk about in the book that people may be more curious about. So I put some of those memory books in there, and stuff about the snack food company. The documentary of the Italy trip is kind of raw because it was 1995 and I had a handheld camera and stuff like that. But it's pretty cool, our little trip to that Italian village. And a lot of other photos of things that we talk about. Even though the book has a bunch of photos, there's other stuff in there that's pretty entertaining. So I'm easy to find.
Nice. Those links, your website, Facebook, and your YouTube, and then there's a couple other links will be in the show notes if anybody wants to check them out there too. Thank you very much for your time. Is there anything you wanted to talk about that we didn't, or
no?
Any thoughts in closing?
I think we could. Well, I'll tell you the story of the title, because people ask me about that, and I said, well, I had one title in mind, and as I was finishing up the book, this one came to me. So it was like knocking in my head, saying, "This is going to be your title." So after this incident in 2011, my mother no longer walked, and so we had to set up a commode bedside. And sometimes Mother Nature took a little longer than was comfortable for either one of us. So one day, just trying to pass the time, I kind of jokingly asked her if she would like her favorite beverage, which was a cup of tea, skim milk, no sugar. And she said yes. And so I made one for her, and it became a hit. So while my mother sat there waiting for nature, she got a nice little treat. And so I called my adventures my multitasking adventures, but my mom was also a multitasker. So A Cup of Tea on the Commode is the title.
Very nice. Thank you for your time and your conversation. I'll talk to you on the other side of this musical exit.
Great. Thanks, TR.